Could it be that your task management system is sabotaging your progress on your tasks and projects? I think that's been a bit of my problem recently. I've been, GTD-ish for years and years. I've had the book since the first edition, since it first came out. And I figured out recently I've gotten a little sloppy, and maybe that's why I've been having trouble making progress. So I've had this crisis going on, and I'm going to do an experiment to see if I can improve upon things. And I thought I'd bring you along. So I'm going to talk about how this came about. I was helping a friend set up a system. I'm going to talk about the research that I did and reviewing my system, and then I'm going to talk about how I'm going to tweak my system and the experiment I'm going to do going forward. So I was helping her set up a system, helping this friend who watched my Collecting Open Loops video, which I'll link below. And it's about the big mind sweep capture step of GTD. And we were discussing what the next steps would be after that. I thought, well, great, I'll help her. We get to chat, and it'll help her. It'll help me because I'll get to see what I should make for my next video. And then we got to the point where we're discussing task versus project. And that's always been a big thing. One thing that was eye-opening to her was just task versus project in general. It was just, she always just had a list and never really thought about the difference between tasks and projects. So yes, that's definitely a big thing. And I definitely knew that. I taught it to her. I knew it. And then the other thing that she didn't know that I will pass along here if you don't, is a good suggestion is to name your projects with outcome words and your tasks with action words or with verbs. So in the case of you want to have your bathroom painted or you want to paint your bathroom, the outcome would be bathroom painted, right? That's the project. And then the verbs starting the steps would be, choose paint color, purchase paint, or go to store, purchase paint, paint bathroom, or gather supplies, right? All of those different steps are going to be the actions. So you want verbs on your tasks or actions, and you want completed status or outcome on your project. So that was another thing she found helpful. Maybe that's a tip to you. So with pure GTD, a project is anything that takes one or more than one action. And I have learned the term squishy, and I'll talk about where I learned that from. And I found out, yeah, I've gotten squishy. Well, I mean, I knew I was squishy. I just didn't know the word. I knew that I had been saying for a while, well, yeah, I know it technically it's supposed to be anything that's more than one step is a project, but oh, those ones that are just a few, they'll be fine. I'll just keep them in my task list. And, I just know there are a few steps. Well, I think maybe that's been a bit of a problem. So after talking to her and trying to put together, her next step and my next video and looking at my system and starting to think about where my system's been a little gummed up, I question that resistance to that more than one task is a project rule. And so in researching, I found 2 videos that made an impact on me, and both of them focused on next actions. And so I'm going to hold off and say a little bit more on that later. But then I went back to look at my system. And so my current system, I have a project list that's a Google Sheet. And I look at that project list during the weekly review. I have tabs for personal, for my channel, and then for the volunteer organization that I'm involved with. I have what I call my master task list that is in my A5 mimosine. I learned that it's named after the Greek goddess of memory, so that's kind of cool. Learned how to pronounce it. And I use that during my weekly reset to pull things off of, and occasionally through the week, but mostly during the weekly reset. And what I do when I pull those is I put them on my weekly-ish task list. So that's been in my current notebook. I run a spiral notebook each season, which is a 2-month period for me. Right now we're in the very middle of my late spring season of May and June. So I keep a page that I'd called my weekly-ish task list. And so I would start it on a weekly reset. And when it got too full to keep adding to it, whether it's 1 week or 3 weeks, I would start a new one when I needed to start one. So The videos, the research. I came across a couple videos. One I'd seen before, which is the one that in his thumbnail it says it's a trap. It's several years old. It's from Next Action Associates. I'll have both of these linked in the description below. And uh, it talked about, you know, people's resistance to having so many projects. So that was obviously very pertinent to me. The other one was from GTD Focus. Both of these entities are GTD coaching services. And so GTD Focus, love some of their stuff. Some of their stuff isn't quite up my alley because it's fairly businessy. But one of the fairly recent videos, uh, Meg Edwards was talking about her daughter and about talking to her daughter about GTD and what did she learn most, what's her most important takeaway from GTD, she's 23 years old, was the next action thinking. And I'd never heard next action thinking in those terms, or if I had flushed it from my mind. Because I'm very prone to say tasks versus next actions, because next actions is just so long and it's 2 words. I just want 1 word. But I'm going to try to kind of get into that next action usage again. And it gets the action in there and it gets the next in there. So I guess they're both kind of important words. But anyway, both of those videos really influenced me to take a look at my system. And so when I looked at my system, my project list was good, which I was pretty sure about. But my master task list and my weekly task list, both of those, really not a surprise that they weren't in tip-top shape, because I had, you know, very directly said, I'm going to not use that more than 1 action rule for my projects. So my experiment, my project list is going to stay pretty much the same, other than the fact it's going to grow. I'm going to keep it in the Google Sheet. I'm going to go and put all of the projects into it. I already started this. I made a copy of it and I started putting things in just to see if I thought I could handle that. I really thought it would bug me to have the smaller things in there. But one reason I think it'll work out well is I can then sort it by different criteria. Right now, I just pretty much leave it sorted by priority. As far as like my personal list, where I have the drop down chip tab things for each of my areas of focus, so I can, you know, I can see what it's for, but I don't usually sort by those. But this way I tried adding a column for time required, so I can see if it's something that I think is going to take me, you know, 3 days versus 3 months. That's a very different kind of project. But I need to figure out exactly how I'm going to do it, because obviously 3 months and 3 days don't sort too well. But so I think I'm going to have to put in how many days I think it will take and just go from there. So I think that's going to work. And then I want to be able to look at the whole list of active projects and know that there's an active next action plan for them. So I want to be able to differentiate between the next actions that I have that I think I'm going to be able to get done this week, which I would consider current, and then the ones that I don't consider to get this done this week. You know, that's what's always been in my master task list in my mind. But again, it's been kind of sloppy. So what I'm going to do is, instead of calling my one the weekly task list, I'm going to call that my current next actions list. And that's going to be for what I plan to get done this week. And then the thing that I used to call my master task list, which was in the Mimozine, which had recently been in Things 3, and I moved it out to the Mimozine. So when I did that, I think I was just kind of sloppy copying things over. I'm going to try this experiment for the next 4.5 weeks. We're right now in the middle of week 22 of 2025, end of May. And my late spring season, I know it's really small on the screen, but I just happened to grab this, is goes through the end of June. And you can see that middle week, I never know whether I'm going to want to treat it in the first month or the second, if it's a 9-week month. And so since we're in the middle of that one, you know, I'm going to run this experiment through the end of June, the end of my late spring season. I run 2-month seasons, and we'll see where we're at, and I'll decide what to do. And so my project list is going to stay in Google Sheets. My on hold next actions is going to stay in the A5, and this will be a page for each area of focus like it's been, but I'm going to start them fresh. And then my on hold next actions, I have a B5 in the Mimozine, which is, a little bit bigger, but not as big as my full notebook. So this way, and I know it's a small thing, I'm just trying to record this all in one take. I'll do some shorts on this, and I'll do some interim follow-ups maybe. But this way I can set these 3 things on my desk, and I can move things from one to the other without having to flip pages around so much. So that is my plan. That is my intention. I would love if you are interested in trying an experiment like this with me, join along. If you have some questions about what I'm doing or why I chose to do it a certain way, I would love to hear those questions in the comments. And like I said, I'll check back in, I'll post updates, and I'll definitely come back and post my results at the end. Thanks for being here. Would love to have you like and subscribe. Give me any other suggestions for videos that you think would be helpful. And we'll see you again soon. Take care.